We think we know the Middle Ages. Plague, mud, superstition, a time of darkness between the light of Rome and the dawn of the Renaissance. We imagine people living short, brutal lives, dying from a simple toothache. And in many ways, that's true. Their understanding of germs was non existent. Their surgery was terrifying. But what if that's only half the story? What if the daily rhythms of their lives, the things they did without thinking, held secrets to health that we've lost? They didn't have a choice. They had to eat what grew nearby. They had to walk. They had to sleep when it was dark. Their survival depended on it. We have endless choices. And those choices are making us sick. We're heavier, more anxious, and more chronically ill than ever before. So, could a medieval peasant's daily routine teach us something? Could their forced simplicity be the medicine we're looking for? Number 18, why did they trust their food more than we do? They ate what they could grow or find. That was the rule. For a medieval peasant, food was simple. It was whole. A common meal was something called pottage. It was a thick stew of grains, vegetables, and whatever else was on hand. Oats, barley, peas, beans, onions, carrots. If they were lucky, a bit of meat or fish went in. The key thing is what was not in it. There were no preservatives, no artificial flavors, no color enhancers, no emulsifiers, no high fructose corn syrup. The food was just food. It came from the ground, went into the pot, and then into their mouths. They didn't have ultra-processed foods. The technology didn't exist. Their bread was made from whole grains, coarsely ground, and fermented with wild yeast. It was dense, sour, and full of nutrients. Our modern bread is often a fluffy white product made from stripped flour, quick rise yeast, and a dozen other ingredients to keep it soft for weeks. The difference is staggering. Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, in his book Ultra-Processed People, conducted a self-experiment where he ate a diet of 80% ultra-processed foods for a month. The results were shocking. He gained weight, felt sluggish and anxious, and his brain scans showed new connections forming, similar to those seen in addiction. He described it as his body being hacked. This is the food that makes up over half the diet in the UK and US. Medieval people were protected from this, not by wisdom, but by necessity. Their food was, by modern standards, incredibly clean. A 2019 study by the National Institutes of Health directly compared two diets. One was unprocessed, the other ultra-processed. People on the ultra-processed diet ate an average of 500 more calories per day and gained weight. People on the unprocessed diet lost weight. The food was designed to be irresistible. Medieval food was not designed. It simply was. It was meant for sustenance, not for profit or to trigger a dopamine rush. They ate until they were full, not until the bag was empty. And think about the fiber. Their diet was incredibly rich in it. All those whole grains, legumes, and root vegetables fed their gut bacteria. Modern research is obsessed with the gut microbiome, this city of trillions of microbes living inside us. We now know it affects everything from our digestion to our mood to our immune system. A high-fiber diet creates a diverse and healthy microbiome. A diet of processed food starves it. Archaeologists examining fossilized medieval feces, known as coprolites, have found evidence of a much more diverse gut microbiome than the average modern person. They also found a lot more parasites, but the bacterial diversity was impressive. They were eating the food their gut was designed for. We have engineered food that our gut barely recognizes. Their bodies worked in harmony with their environment. Our bodies are in a constant state of confusion, trying to process substances that didn't exist a century ago. Have we engineered the nutrition right out of our food in the pursuit of convenience and shelf life? If our gut microbiome is an ancient ecosystem, how many crucial microbial species have we driven to extinction with our modern diet? And the most unsettling question of all, if ultra-processed food can rewire our brains like an addictive substance, are we still truly in control of what we choose to eat? Number 17, could singing a song be better than a prescription? Life was hard, it was often monotonous and filled with backbreaking labor. But it was not silent. People sang. They sang while working in the fields. They sang in church. They sang in the tavern. They told stories. Epics like Beowulf weren't read silently in a study. They were performed, spoken aloud in a hall full of people, a shared experience of rhythm and sound. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a fundamental part of social cohesion and mental health. In a world without streaming services, podcasts, or even widespread literacy, the human voice was the primary medium for culture, history, and connection. Think of sea shanties. They weren't just for fun. The rhythm coordinated the movements of sailors hauling ropes or raising anchors. The shared act of singing turned a group of individuals into a single, functioning machine. It built camaraderie and made grueling work bearable. This has profound physiological effects. We know this now. When people sing together, their heartbeats can synchronize. A study from the Sahlgrenska Academy at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden found that choir members' heart rates slowed down and eventually synchronized with the structure of the song. This calming effect is linked to the vagus nerve, a key part of the nervous system that regulates our rest and digest functions. Singing stimulates it. It's essentially a form of controlled breathing like yoga or meditation. It lowers stress, reduces anxiety, and releases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers and mood elevators. The medieval people didn't know about the vagus nerve, but they knew that singing in a group made them feel better. They knew it bonded them together. After a long day of toil, sitting around a fire listening to a story or singing a ballad wasn't just passing the time. It was a communal act of processing the day, reinforcing social ties, and finding a place in a shared narrative. Today, we are more isolated than ever. We consume our entertainment through headphones alone. We communicate through text on screens. A 2018 study by Cigna found that nearly half of Americans report sometimes or always feeling alone. Loneliness has been shown to be as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk of heart disease, dementia, and stroke. The communal singing and storytelling of the Middle Ages was a powerful antidote to this. It was a built-in, daily practice of social connection. The rise of community choirs today is a recognition of this deep-seated need. People are rediscovering the simple, powerful joy of raising their voices together. It's a practice that requires no equipment, no subscription, just a willingness to participate in something bigger than oneself. It was a technology for well-being that was woven into the fabric of their society. In our hyper-individualized world, have we forgotten how to be together in a simple, unmediated way? Is the rise in anxiety and depression partly a symptom of a society that has lost its collective voice? If synchronized heartbeats and shared breath build community, what is the long-term physiological effect of consuming all our culture alone, through screens and earbuds? Number 16, did they have a better relationship with the cold? They were cold. A lot of the time there was no central heating, castles were notoriously drafty, and a peasant's hut was little better. A fire in the hearth was the only source of warmth, and it was often smoky and inefficient. They wore layers of wool and linen, but the cold was a constant companion, especially in winter. We see this as a hardship, a sign of their primitive existence, but what if this constant exposure to cold had unintended health benefits? We live our lives in a state of thermal monotony. We go from a heated house to a heated car to a heated office and back again. Our bodies rarely have to work to regulate their own temperature. This comfort comes at a cost. Our modern science is rediscovering the power of cold exposure. People like Wim Hof, the Iceman, have popularized the idea of cold plunges and cold showers for health. The science is starting to back him up. When your body is exposed to cold, it has to adapt. It can increase your metabolic rate as it works to stay warm. It can stimulate the production of brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Unlike the white fat that stores energy, brown fat burns energy to create heat. Having more brown fat is associated with better metabolic health and a lower risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. A 2014 study in the journal Diabetes found that just sleeping in a cooler room, 66 deg F or 19 deg C, increased participants' brown fat and improved their insulin sensitivity. Medieval people were in effect doing this every night for a large part of the year. Air cold exposure is also a powerful anti-inflammatory. It causes vasoconstriction, the tightening of blood vessels, which can reduce swelling and inflammation throughout the body. This is why athletes use ice baths. Chronic, low-grade inflammation is now understood to be a driver of many modern diseases, from heart disease to autoimmune conditions. Regular, mild cold stress could have helped keep this inflammation in check for medieval populations. Furthermore, the shock of cold water triggers a flood of endorphins and norepinephrine in the brain, which can have an antidepressant effect and improve mood and focus. They may not have enjoyed bathing in a cold river, but it could have been giving them a mental and physiological boost we now pay for at boutique wellness centers. Their lack of comfort forced a resilience on their bodies that our constant comfort has allowed us to lose. By creating perfectly temperature-controlled environments, have we made our own bodies metabolically lazy? Could the epidemic of chronic inflammatory diseases be partially linked to our loss of hormetic stressors like cold? What if the key to unlocking a more robust metabolism isn't a new diet pill, but simply turning down the thermostat? Number 15, why was their junk food healthier than our health food? When we think of junk food, we think of something cheap, processed, and full of empty calories. Medieval people didn't really have that. Their version of junk was offal, the internal organs and entrails of an animal. The heart, liver, kidneys, tongue, tripe. To the wealthy lord who preferred the prime muscle cuts, these were the leftover bits. To the peasant, they were a precious source of nutrition. Today, we turn our noses up at these parts of the animal. We want a neat plastic-wrapped chicken breast or a steak, but in doing so, we are throwing away the most nutrient-dense parts of the animal. This nose-to-tail eating was not a philosophy for them, it was a reality. Nothing was wasted. Let's look at liver. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. A small serving of beef liver contains more than the daily requirement of vitamin B12, vitamin A, and copper, and it's packed with iron, folate, and choline. These are nutrients that are critical for brain health, energy production, and preventing birth defects. Many people in the modern world are deficient in these very nutrients. Heart is an incredible source of coenzyme Q10, CoQ10, a compound vital for energy production in our cells and for cardiovascular health. Kidneys are rich in selenium, and tripe is a good source of collagen. They were eating the whole animal and getting a complete package of vitamins, minerals, and compounds that we now try to replicate in expensive supplements. Another key waste product they used was bones. Bones were simmered for hours, sometimes days, to create a rich bone broth. This was the base for soups, stews, and pottage. It was a way to extract every last bit of nutrition from the animal. We now know that bone broth is a fantastic source of collagen, gelatin, and minerals like calcium and magnesium. Collagen is the most abundant protein in our body, essential for healthy skin, hair, nails, joints, and gut lining. Conditions like leaky gut are now being linked to a lack of gelatin and collagen in the modern diet. People are paying a fortune for collagen powders to add to their coffee, when medieval people were getting it for free as a byproduct of their cooking. You know, they didn't know about collagen or CoQ10, but they knew that these foods gave them strength and kept them healthy. Their economic necessity led them to a diet that was in many ways more nutritionally complete than our own. Has our squeamishness about food's origins led us to a diet that is nutritionally incomplete? Are we throwing away the medicine and eating the disease by prioritizing muscle meat over organ meat? Could the solution to many common nutrient deficiencies be found not in a pill bottle, but in the butcher's discard pile? Number 14, could a walk to the well be better than a trip to the gym? No one in the Middle Ages had a gym membership, no one went for a run to get their cardio in, and yet, for the most part, they were not sedentary. Their lives were a form of constant low-level movement. A peasant farmer's day involved walking to the fields, bending, lifting, digging, and carrying. A woman's work involved carrying heavy buckets of water from the well, churning butter, kneading bread, and walking to the market. Even a town dweller would have walked everywhere. You know, there were no cars, no buses, no elevators. Life was exercise. This type of movement is what scientists now call NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's the energy we burn for everything we do that isn't sleeping, eating, or dedicated exercise. And it turns out to be incredibly important for our health. Dr. James Levine of the Mayo Clinic is a leading researcher in this field. He famously said, sitting is the new smoking. His research has shown that people who are lean and people who are obese spend the same amount of time in dedicated exercise. The difference is in their NEAT. Leaner people tend to stand, walk, and fidget much more throughout the day. People who sit for long periods have a higher risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some types of cancer, even if they go to the gym for an hour a day. That hour of intense activity cannot undo the damage of 10 hours of sitting still. Our bodies are designed to move. The medieval lifestyle, for all its hardships, fulfilled this design. Their muscles were constantly engaged, their circulation was always flowing, and their metabolism was kept active. Contrast that with a modern office worker. They sit to eat breakfast, sit in the car to drive to work, sit at a desk for 8 hours, sit in the car to come home, and then sit on the couch to watch TV. This profound lack of movement is completely alien to human history. The human body evolved over millions of years to be an efficient walking machine. Stephen J. Pine, in his book The Last Lost World, details how bipedalism was a key evolutionary advantage. Our entire physiology is built around it. The constant varied movement of medieval life also built practical functional strength. They didn't have sculpted biceps from lifting dumbbells. They had strong backs from lifting hay, powerful legs from walking up hills, and a sturdy core from stabilizing their bodies during manual labor. It was a fitness that was integrated into life, not segregated into a 1-hour time slot. Have we optimized all the movement out of our daily lives, and is it killing us? Is our modern concept of exercise as a separate, intense activity a flawed solution to the problem of our sedentary culture? What if the most effective fitness program isn't about joining a gym, but about re-engineering our homes and communities to force us to move more, just like in the past? Number 13, what if darkness is a nutrient we're lacking? Before the invention of the light bulb, darkness was a real thing. When the sun went down, the world became dark and quiet. The primary sources of light were fire, candles, or oil lamps. They were expensive, smoky, and didn't produce much light. For most people, activity largely ceased with the setting sun. They went to bed early, and their sleep was likely very different from ours. Historical records and literary references suggest that many people in the pre-industrial era practiced what is called segmented sleep or biphasic sleep. The historian Roger Eckhart, in his book At Days Close Night in Times Past, compiled over 500 references to this pattern. People would go to bed a couple hours after dusk, sleep for about 4 hours, and then wake up for an hour or two. This period, known as the watch, was a time for quiet contemplation, prayer, intimacy, or even light chores. And then they would go back to sleep for another 4 hours until dawn. This pattern disappeared with the proliferation of artificial street and home lighting in the 19th century. We began to colonize the night, filling it with activity and light. We started to see a full, consolidated 8 hours of sleep as the ideal. But what if that's not our natural state? Many people who suffer from maintenance insomnia, where they wake in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, might just be experiencing a deep ancestral sleep pattern. Their anxiety comes from the belief that their sleep is broken, when it might be perfectly normal. The key difference is the light. Exposure to light, especially the blue light from our screens after sunset, suppresses the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that tells our body it's time to sleep. By staring at phones, tablets, and TVs late into the night, we are sending our brains a powerful signal. It's still daytime. Stay awake. This disrupts our circadian rhythm, the 24-hour internal clock that governs our sleep-wake cycle and many other bodily processes. A disrupted circadian rhythm is linked to a host of health problems, including obesity, diabetes, depression, and even cancer. The World Health Organization has classified night shift work, which causes severe circadian disruption, as a probable carcinogen. Medieval people lived their lives in sync with the natural cycles of light and dark. Their bodies' clocks were set by the sun. This profound darkness they experienced at night was a crucial signal for rest and repair. We have replaced this with a perpetual twilight of artificial light, and our health is paying the price. Getting deep, restorative sleep might be one of the most powerful health habits we could re-adopt from them. Is insomnia a modern disease caused by our fear of the dark and our addiction to artificial light? If segmented sleep is our natural pattern, how many other disorders are simply mismatches between our ancient biology and our modern environment? What undiscovered cellular repair processes only happen in the kind of profound, uninterrupted darkness that most of us never experience anymore? Number 12, why did they put rotting vegetables on their plates? The word sounds unpleasant, rotting, but what they were doing was fermentation. In a time before refrigeration, fermentation was a primary method of preserving food. The cabbages were turned into sauerkraut, cucumbers became pickles, milk was made into cheese and yogurt, grains were fermented to make bread, beer, and ale. This wasn't a health trend, it was a matter of survival. It allowed them to store the harvest and have food through the lean winter months. but in the process of preserving their food, they were also transforming it into a powerful probiotic. Well, fermentation is the process of using microorganisms like bacteria and yeast to convert carbohydrates into alcohol or organic acids. This not only preserves the food, but also populates it with billions of beneficial microbes. When they ate these fermented foods, they were consuming a huge variety of live bacteria that helped to populate their gut. As we've learned, a healthy and diverse gut microbiome is crucial for overall health. These microbes help us digest our food, produce essential vitamins, regulate our immune system, and even influence our mood. The modern diet, with its sterile, pasteurized, and processed foods, is often devoid of these beneficial bacteria. We've sanitized our food supply to protect ourselves from harmful pathogens, but we've also eliminated the good guys. The rise in autoimmune diseases, allergies, and digestive issues in the modern world is thought by many scientists to be linked to this loss of microbial diversity. The hygiene hypothesis suggests that our overly clean environment is leaving our immune systems underdeveloped and prone to overreacting. Your books like The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz have brought this ancient practice back into the mainstream. People are starting to understand that the bacteria in foods like kimchi, kefir, and real sourdough bread are not contaminants but essential allies. A 2021 study from Stanford University found that a diet high in fermented foods increased microbiome diversity and decreased markers of inflammation. Medieval people were getting these benefits with almost every meal. Their sourdough bread was a fermented food. Their cheese was a fermented food. The ale or small beer they drank, often safer than the water, was a fermented beverage. They were constantly topping up their internal ecosystem with beneficial microbes, building a resilient and robust gut that could handle a world full of pathogens. In our quest for sterile, long-lasting food, have we accidentally created a sterile, weakened inner world? Could the simple act of adding a scoop of sauerkraut or a glass of kefir to our daily diet be more effective than a bottle of expensive, lab-grown probiotics? If our ancestors co-evolved with these fermenting microbes for millennia, what essential biological conversations have we silenced by removing them from our plates? Number 11, could a weed from a medieval garden save your life? When a medieval person got sick, they didn't go to a pharmacy. They might go to a wise woman, a monk, or an apothecary who would look to the garden or the forest for a cure. Herbalism was medicine. This wasn't just random guesswork. It was a deep tradition of knowledge passed down through generations. People knew that willow bark could ease pain and fever. We know why now. It contains salicin, the compound from which aspirin was synthesized in the 19th century. They knew that foxglove digitalis purpurea could help with dropsy, or fluid retention caused by a weak heart. We now know it contains digoxin, a powerful cardiac drug still used today. Their medical framework was based on the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, which we now know is incorrect. But their practical observations of what worked were often spot on. One of the most remarkable figures in medieval medicine was Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century German abbess. She was a writer, composer, philosopher, and medical practitioner. Her work, Physica, is a comprehensive text detailing the medicinal properties of hundreds of plants, animals, and minerals. She wrote about using lavender for headaches, parsley for heart trouble, and galangal for stomach pain. Much of this was dismissed as superstition for centuries, but modern science is beginning to validate some of her claims. For example, studies have shown that lavender does have calming, anti-anxiety properties. They were practicing phytotherapy, the use of plants for their therapeutic benefits. Well, it's the oldest form of medicine, and it's the foundation of modern pharmacology. A huge number of our current drugs were either derived directly from plants or synthesized to mimic a plant compound. We have come to rely on single, isolated compounds in a pill. This can be incredibly powerful, but also comes with side effects. Herbalists argue that the whole plant offers a more balanced, synergistic effect. The main active compound is supported by dozens of other minor compounds that can enhance its effects and buffer against side effects. For example, the herb meadowsweet also contains salicylates like willow, but it also contains compounds that protect the stomach lining, which is why aspirin can cause stomach ulcers, while meadowsweet tea generally doesn't. As medieval people had a direct, hands-on relationship with their medicine. They saw it grow, they harvested it, they prepared it. Today, we have a profound disconnect. We take a white pill with no understanding of its origins. We Adopting some of this ancient wisdom doesn't mean abandoning modern medicine. It means understanding that the natural world is still a powerful source of healing for common ailments. How many potential life-saving drugs are hidden in plants we haven't yet studied, while rainforests and ancient ecosystems disappear? By focusing only on isolating single active compounds, are we missing the synergistic benefits of using the whole plant as our ancestors did? If a 12th century nun could identify the healing properties of hundreds of plants through observation, what have we lost by replacing that deep ecological knowledge with a blind faith in pharmaceuticals? Number 10, was hunger a regular part of a healthy life? We live in a world of constant food availability. We are told to eat 3 square meals a day plus snacks. The idea of being hungry is often seen as a problem to be solved immediately. For medieval people, hunger was a normal part of the rhythm of life. There were the natural cycles of feast and famine. The summer and autumn were times of abundance after the harvest. The late winter and early spring, often called the hungry gap, were times of scarcity when food stores ran low. There were also structured religious periods of fasting. Lent, the 40 days before Easter, was a time of significant dietary restriction, where meat, dairy, and eggs were often forbidden. There were also regular fast days on Fridays and other holy days. This wasn't an occasional diet, it was a culturally ingrained practice for a large part of the year. This cyclical pattern of eating and fasting may have had profound health benefits. We are now rediscovering the science behind this, often under the name intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. When we are constantly eating, our body is in growth and storage mode, fueled by glucose. When we fast for a period of time, our body switches its fuel source, it starts to burn stored fat for energy. More importantly, it activates a cellular cleanup process called autophagy. The term was coined by the Nobel Prize-winning scientist Yoshinori Ohsumi. Autophagy is like the body's recycling program. The cells identify old, damaged, or dysfunctional components and break them down, reusing the parts to build new healthy ones. It's a fundamental process for cellular repair and rejuvenation. A failure in autophagy is linked to aging and many diseases, including cancer and neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's. By eating constantly, we may be suppressing this vital cleanup process. The regular periods of fasting in the medieval world would have consistently promoted autophagy, helping to clear out cellular debris and keep the body functioning optimally. They didn't know the molecular mechanisms, but they associated fasting with spiritual and physical purification. They were not wrong. Modern studies have shown that intermittent fasting can improve insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, promote weight loss, and may even extend lifespan in animal studies. The medieval pattern of feasting and fasting mirrors the environment in which our genes were forged. For most of human history, food was not always available. Our bodies are exquisitely adapted to handle periods of scarcity. It's the constant, unrelenting abundance of the modern world that is the novel and dangerous experiment. Is the modern 3 meals a day plus snacks model a historical anomaly that is preventing our bodies from performing essential maintenance? Could the simple act of skipping a meal be one of the most powerful anti-aging tools we have? If our cells have a cleanup mode that's only activated by hunger, what long-term damage are we doing by never allowing our bodies to get hungry? Number 9, did they wear healthier clothes than we do? We don't often think of clothing as a health habit, but what we put next to our skin matters. For most of the Middle Ages, the vast majority of people wore clothes made from 2 materials, wool and linen. Cotton was an expensive luxury, and synthetic fibers like polyester and nylon were centuries away from being invented. These natural fibers have properties that are incredibly beneficial for the body. Linen, made from the flax plant, is highly breathable. It can absorb a significant amount of moisture before it feels damp, wicking sweat away from the skin and allowing it to evaporate. This keeps the body cool and dry and makes it harder for odor-causing bacteria to thrive. It's also naturally hypoallergenic and antibacterial. Wool from sheep is a fantastic insulator. Its crimped fibers create tiny air pockets that trap body heat, keeping you warm even when it's wet. It can also absorb a lot of moisture, again wicking it away from the skin, and like linen, it is naturally odor resistant. Now consider our modern wardrobe. It's dominated by synthetic fabrics, polyester, acrylic, nylon. These are essentially plastics derived from petroleum. They do not breathe. When you sweat in a polyester shirt, the moisture gets trapped against your skin. This creates a warm, damp environment that is a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, which is why synthetic gym clothes get so smelly so quickly. This trapped moisture can also disrupt the skin's natural microbiome and can lead to rashes, irritation, and skin conditions. Furthermore, there's growing concern about microplastics. Every time we wash these synthetic clothes, they shed thousands of tiny plastic fibers that go down the drain into our waterways and eventually into our food chain. We are literally eating and drinking our own clothes. We are also absorbing chemicals through our skin. Many synthetic clothes are treated with chemicals for stain resistance, wrinkle-free properties, or fire retardancy. The long-term health effects of this constant, low-level chemical exposure are largely unknown. The medieval peasant, in their simple linen undertunic and wool overcoat, was wearing a technologically superior garment from a health perspective. Their clothes worked with their body, helping it to regulate temperature and moisture. Our modern clothes often work against it, trapping heat and sweat. The medieval clothing system was also more sustainable. The wool and linen are renewable resources that are biodegradable. A discarded woolen tunic would simply rot back into the earth. A discarded polyester t-shirt will sit in a landfill for hundreds of years. Their clothing was practical, durable, and healthy. Ours is often cheap, disposable, and potentially harmful. Are the synthetic clothes we wear every day contributing to skin problems and disrupting our hormonal systems through chemical exposure? If our clothes shed microplastics with every wash, what is the cumulative effect of a lifetime of wearing and breathing in these tiny plastic particles? Could a return to natural fibers like wool and linen be a simple but powerful way to improve our personal health and the health of the planet? Number 8. Why was their bread so much better for them? Bread was the staff of life. It was a primary source of calories for everyone, from the poorest peasant to the richest king. But their bread was nothing like the soft, white, sliced loaf we buy in the supermarket today. Medieval bread, especially the bread eaten by common people, was made from whole grains like rye, spelt, or barley. The grain was stone ground, which means the entire grain kernel of the bran, the germ, and the endosperm was included in the flour. This made it incredibly rich in fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. Modern white flour, in contrast, is made by stripping away the bran and the germ, leaving only the starchy endosperm. This was originally done to increase shelf life, as the oils in the germ can go rancid. But in the process, we stripped away most of the nutrition. The second crucial difference was the leavening process. They didn't have commercial fast-acting yeast, they used a sourdough starter. A sourdough starter is a living culture of wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria, specifically lactobacillus, that are captured from the environment. The process of making bread with a sourdough starter is long and slow. The dough has to ferment for many hours, sometimes overnight. During this long fermentation, a magical transformation happens. The bacteria and yeast begin to pre-digest the flour. They break down the gluten, making it easier for many people to digest. More importantly, they neutralize phytic acid. Phytic acid is a compound found in the bran of all grains. It's often called an anti-nutrient because it binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and calcium in the gut, preventing our bodies from absorbing them. The long, slow fermentation of sourdough neutralizes a large portion of this phytic acid, unlocking the full mineral content of the grain. So the medieval peasant's dark, dense sour loaf was not only more nutritious because it was whole grain, but the nutrients within it were also more bioavailable. Our modern, fast-risen white bread is a nutritional disaster in comparison. It's made from stripped flour, it spikes our blood sugar, and its nutrients are less available. The sourdough process also gives the bread a lower glycemic index, meaning it doesn't cause the same rapid spike and crash in blood sugar. This is better for long-term metabolic health and can help prevent conditions like type 2 diabetes. They made bread this way out of necessity, but they stumbled upon a method that was biochemically perfect for maximizing nutrition and digestibility. By prioritizing speed and shelf life in our bread making, have we created a product that actively works against our health? Could the modern epidemic of gluten sensitivity be partially caused not by the gluten itself, but by the fact that we no longer ferment our grains properly to make them digestible? How many other traditional food preparation techniques, like soaking and sprouting, contain ancient wisdom about unlocking nutrition that our modern food science has ignored? Number 7, were their communities a stronger form of medicine than ours? In the medieval world, you belonged to a place. You were born in a village, you knew everyone in it, and you would likely die there. Life was lived in close proximity to others. This was a world of deep social bonds, but not by choice. Your survival depended on your community. If your barn burned down, your neighbors helped you rebuild it. If you were sick, they helped with your chores. People worked together, celebrated religious festivals together, and shared in the hardships of life. This dense web of social connection was not always pleasant. It came with a lack of privacy and intense social pressure, but it provided a powerful buffer against isolation and despair. We now have a name for this social capital. It's the value we get from our social networks. And study after study shows that it is one of the most powerful predictors of health and longevity. The famous Roseto study is a classic example. In the 1960s, researchers found that the small town of Roseto, Pennsylvania, populated by Italian immigrants, had a remarkably low rate of heart disease compared to neighboring towns. They smoked, they drank, and they ate a diet rich in fat. But they had incredibly strong, multi-generational family and community ties. They had, in the words of the researchers, a powerful, protective social structure. As the younger generations moved away and adopted a more typical American suburban lifestyle, their rates of heart disease converged with the national average. It wasn't their genes or their diet, it was their community that was protecting them. Today we are living through an epidemic of loneliness. The sociologist Robert Putnam chronicled this decline in his book, Bowling Alone. We have fewer close friends, we are less likely to belong to community groups, and we spend more time alone. As mentioned before, loneliness is a profound physiological stressor. It increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, and elevates stress hormones like cortisol. It is a greater risk factor for early death than obesity or physical inactivity. The medieval peasant, for all their material poverty, was rich in social connection. Their world was built on mutual obligation and shared identity. Our world is built on individualism and mobility. We have traded the security of the tribe for the freedom of the individual, and our health is suffering as a result. In our pursuit of individual freedom and success, have we dismantled the very social structures that used to keep us healthy? Is it possible that the most important health intervention is not a new drug or diet, but simply knowing your neighbors? If loneliness is a physiological state as dangerous as smoking, why don't we treat it with the same public health urgency? Number 6, did they get a better workout from their daily chores? Let's think about the physical movements of medieval life again, but from a different angle. It wasn't just about walking, it was about functional fitness. A blacksmith swinging a hammer, a farmer scything a field, a woman lifting a child while carrying a bucket. These are complex, compound movements. They engage the entire body. A blacksmith swing involves rotational power from the core, strength from the back and shoulders, and a solid foundation from the legs. It's a full-body explosive movement. This is what modern fitness trainers try to replicate with kettlebells and medicine balls. For the blacksmith, it was just another day at work. This kind of work built a different kind of strength than modern gym workouts. It built practical, real-world strength that was useful for the tasks of daily life. The concept of functional training is now a popular trend in the fitness world. It's about training movements, not just muscles. It focuses on exercises that mimic real-life activities: lifting, pushing, pulling, squatting, carrying. This is exactly what medieval people did all day long. A peasant squatting to weed a field was performing a perfect deep squat, a fundamental human movement that many modern adults have lost the ability to do because we spend all our time in chairs. This constant squatting kept their hips mobile and their legs strong. Carrying heavy, awkward loads, a sack of grain, a pail of milk is what we now call a loaded carry. It's one of the best exercises for building core strength and overall resilience. Our modern approach to fitness is often fragmented. We isolate muscles, we do bicep curls, leg extensions, and crunches. These movements have little relevance to the way our bodies move in the real world. This can lead to imbalances and injuries. The integrated, full-body movements of medieval life created a more balanced and resilient physique. They might not have had six-pack abs, but they had strong, capable bodies that could perform hard physical work day in and day out without breaking down. Their fitness was a byproduct of their existence. Our fitness is something we have to schedule and pursue because our daily lives no longer demand it of us. Has our obsession with aesthetic muscle building in the gym made us weaker in a practical, functional sense? What if the best personal trainer is simply a life that requires you to lift, carry, and move in varied and challenging ways? Are we creating bodies that look good in a mirror, but are poorly adapted to the physical demands of the real world? Number 5, could their simple diet prevent modern diseases? The medieval diet, especially for the common person, was monotonous. It was based on grains, vegetables, and legumes. Meat was a luxury. Sugar was an extremely rare and expensive spice used more like a medicine. Honey was the main sweetener, but it was also a valuable commodity. This meant their diet was, by default, very low in sugar. This is perhaps one of the most significant differences from our modern way of eating. The average American now consumes around 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day. This constant flood of sugar is a primary driver of the twin epidemics of obesity and type 2 diabetes. The body is simply not designed to handle this much. Their diet was also naturally rich in plants. The pot was full of onions, leeks, cabbage, peas, and beans. These vegetables are packed with vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are the thousands of natural compounds in plants that can have protective and anti-inflammatory effects in the body. The modern diet is often heavy in processed foods and light on vegetables. We are missing out on this army of protective compounds. The medieval diet was also very seasonal. They ate what was available, fresh greens and herbs in the spring, fruits and vegetables in the summer and autumn, and stored root vegetables, dried beans, and grains in the winter. This constant rotation of foods would have provided a wide variety of nutrients and fed different types of gut bacteria throughout the year, promoting a more diverse and resilient microbiome. Compare this to our modern supermarket diet. We can eat strawberries in December and asparagus in January. This year-round availability seems like a luxury, but it often means our food is picked unripe, transported thousands of miles, and has a lower nutrient content than its seasonal, locally grown counterpart. A 2007 study by the Kushi Institute analyzed the nutrient data of 43 different garden crops and found that there have been reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, iron, and vitamin C over the past half-century. We are eating more, but we may be getting less nutrition. The simple, seasonal, low-sugar, plant-heavy diet of the medieval peasant, born of necessity, aligns perfectly with what modern nutritional science tells us is the best way to prevent chronic disease. Is the abundance and variety of our modern food supply an illusion that masks a deep nutritional poverty? If sugar is as detrimental as many scientists claim, will future generations look back at our diets with the same horror we reserve for medieval sanitation? What if the perfect diet isn't a complex new plan, but simply a return to eating real, seasonal food as our ancestors had no choice but to do? Number 4, did they understand the importance of rest? Life was hard physical labor, but it was not relentless. The rhythm of work was governed by the sun and the seasons, not by the clock. There was a time for work and a time for rest. The religious calendar was a key part of this. It was filled with holy days, or holidays, which were mandatory days of rest. It's estimated that, in addition to Sundays, people in medieval England had around 40 to 50 other religious holidays throughout the year. On these days, work was forbidden. It was a time for church, for feasting, and for community festivals. This built-in downtime was a crucial part of the social fabric. It provided regular, predictable breaks from the toil of daily life. This is very different from our modern concept of work and rest. We work on a rigid 9-to-5 schedule, often year-round, with only a few weeks of vacation. And even on our evenings and weekends, we are often still connected to work through our phones and emails. We have lost the distinction between work time and rest time. This always-on culture is a recipe for burnout. Burnout is now recognized by the World Health Organization as an occupational phenomenon characterized by feelings of energy depletion, increased mental distance from one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. It is a state of chronic stress. Chronic stress is devastating for our health. It floods the body with cortisol, which over time can lead to high blood pressure, a weakened immune system, anxiety, and depression. The medieval system, with its frequent and mandatory holidays, provided a natural defense against this. It forced people to stop. It recognized that rest was not a luxury, but a necessity. The work itself was also different. It was physically demanding, but it followed a natural rhythm. These farmers worked incredibly hard during planting and harvest, but the winter was a quieter, slower time. This seasonal variation is a stark contrast to the monotonous year-round grind of many modern jobs. The medieval peasant might have been exhausted at the end of a long day in the fields, but it was a physical exhaustion that could be cured by a night's sleep. The mental and emotional exhaustion of modern burnout is much harder to recover from. Have we created a culture of work that is fundamentally at odds with our biological need for rest and recovery? Is our modern productivity an illusion built on a foundation of chronic stress and leading to inevitable burnout? What if the most radical act of self-care in the 21st century is to reclaim the sacred mandatory rest that was a normal part of life in the 14th? Number 3, why did they spend so much time outside? For the vast majority of the medieval population who lived and worked in rural, agricultural settings, life was lived outdoors. They're in the sun, in the wind, and in the rain. Their skin was exposed to sunlight, their eyes looked at distant horizons, and their hands were in the soil. This constant connection to the natural world had profound, if unintentional, health benefits. The most obvious one is vitamin D. Vitamin D is often called the sunshine vitamin because our skin produces it when exposed to ultraviolet B UVB rays from the sun. It's crucial for bone health as it helps the body absorb calcium. But we now know it's much more than that. It's a hormone that plays a role in immune function, mood regulation, and inflammation. Vitamin D deficiency is a global pandemic with an estimated 1 billion people worldwide having low levels. This deficiency is linked to a higher risk of osteoporosis, autoimmune diseases, and even some cancers. As medieval people spending their days in the fields would have had robust vitamin D levels for most of the year. Spending time in nature also has a powerful effect on our mental health. The practice of forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, was developed in Japan in the 1980s. Research has shown that simply spending time in a forest can reduce blood pressure, lower cortisol levels, and improve concentration and memory. The air in forests is rich in phytoncides, antimicrobial compounds emitted by trees, which may boost our immune system. For medieval people were, in essence, forest bathing every day. Their view from their office was not a computer screen, but a field, a forest, a sky. This constant exposure to natural patterns and landscapes is deeply calming to the human nervous system. Staring at a screen for hours, on the other hand, puts our eyes and brains under constant strain. Finally, there is the connection to the soil itself. Working with the earth, getting your hands dirty, exposes you to a vast array of harmless microorganisms. Dr. Christopher Lowry, a neuroscientist at the University of Colorado Boulder, has studied a specific soil bacterium called Mycobacterium vaccae. His research suggests that exposure to this bacterium can have anti-inflammatory and antidepressant effects, possibly by affecting the immune system and the gut-brain axis. We live in a sanitized world, disconnected from the soil and its microbial riches. The medieval peasant was in constant contact with this good dirt, potentially boosting their mood and immune function in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Is vitamin D deficiency a disease of modern architecture? Have we designed our lives so perfectly to be indoors that we've cut ourselves off from an essential nutrient and a powerful source of mental peace? But what if the trillions of microbes in a handful of healthy soil hold keys to our mental and immune health that we are ignoring in our sterile indoor world? And number 2, could a simple pottage pot be the secret to a healthy diet? We've talked about the ingredients of the medieval diet, but let's consider the method of cooking. For many, the central piece of cooking equipment was a single pot, hung over the fire. This was the pottage pot. Everything went in grains, vegetables, herbs, and occasionally meat or fish. The food was cooked slowly, for hours. This simple one-pot cooking method has several hidden health advantages. Firstly, it's a very gentle way of cooking. The slow simmering helps to break down the tough cellulose in plants, making the nutrients more available. It's much easier to digest a long-cooked stew than raw vegetables. This was crucial for a population that needed to extract every possible calorie and nutrient from their food. Secondly, all the nutrients stay in the pot. When we boil vegetables and then discard the water, we are throwing away a huge amount of water-soluble vitamins and minerals. In a pottage or stew, that cooking liquid becomes the base of the meal. All the goodness that leaches out of the vegetables is consumed. It's a nutritionally complete and efficient way to cook. The addition of bones to the pot to make a bone broth base would have added even more minerals, collagen, and gelatin, as we've discussed. It was a whole food cooking method in the truest sense of the word. Thirdly, it's a naturally balanced way of eating. A pottage is a combination of carbohydrates from the grains, fiber, and micronutrients from the vegetables, and sometimes protein from legumes or meat. It's a complete meal in a bowl. It's also very satiating. The combination of fiber and liquid fills you up and keeps you full for a long time. This is very different from many modern processed foods, which are hyperpalatable and low in satiety, encouraging us to overeat. You can't really binge on pottage. You eat until you are full, and then you stop. This simple cooking method naturally encouraged moderation and provided a balanced intake of nutrients. It was a technology of thrift, born from having only one pot and one fire, but it resulted in a style of eating that is remarkably healthy. Have our modern, complicated cooking methods with multiple pots and pans and high-heat techniques made our food less nutritious than a simple, slow-cooked stew? Is the act of throwing away cooking water one of the biggest nutritional mistakes we make every day? What if the solution to creating balanced, healthy meals isn't a complex diet plan, but simply a return to the one-pot cooking of our ancestors? Number one, what if the greatest medieval health habit was a state of mind? This may be the most challenging and important habit to consider. Medieval people lived with a sense of acceptance that is almost alien to us. They accepted hardship, they accepted pain, and they accepted death. They did not believe they had ultimate control over their lives. Their fate was in the hands of God, or fortune, or nature. This is not to say they were passive. They worked hard to survive, but they had a fundamentally different outlook. They lived with a degree of stoicism and resilience that we have lost. When a child died of a fever, it was a terrible tragedy, but it was also a common part of life. Today, we expect medicine to have an answer for everything. We believe that with enough technology, money, or effort, we can control every outcome. This belief that we should be in complete control is a source of immense anxiety. This medieval mindset was partly shaped by their religious beliefs, which emphasized humility and the transient nature of earthly life. But it was also a practical response to the world they lived in. They were constantly reminded of their own fragility. We, on the other hand, are insulated from these realities. We have created a world that tries to eliminate all risk, all discomfort, all pain. And in doing so, we have become less resilient. We are less able to cope with the inevitable hardships of life. Dr. Martin Seligman's work on learned helplessness shows that when we feel we have no control over negative events, we can fall into a state of passivity and depression. But the flip side is that the belief in total control can be just as damaging. When something bad happens, a sickness, a loss, we blame ourselves. We feel we should have done more, known more, been better. This adds a layer of psychological suffering on top of the original event. The medieval acceptance of life's unpredictability was a form of mental armor. It allowed them to endure things that would break many of us. This is not about romanticizing their suffering. It is about recognizing a psychological strength. The modern wellness movement often focuses on optimization and control, tracking our steps, our sleep, our macros. It can become another source of pressure and anxiety. Perhaps the most profound health habit we could readopt from the Middle Ages is a dose of their humility. An acceptance that some things are outside of our control, a resilience that comes not from trying to engineer a perfect life, but from learning to live with imperfection. In our relentless pursuit of health, happiness, and control, have we accidentally created a culture of profound anxiety? Is our modern obsession with wellness actually making us mentally weaker and less resilient in the face of life's true challenges? What if the ultimate key to a healthy life is not a perfect diet or a perfect workout, but the simple ancient wisdom of accepting what we cannot change?